Hello everyone! Good evening! I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. Welcome to the channel. Today is a Saturday night. We are going to be talking about some books because that is what I've decided to spend Saturday nights doing because I love to talk about books. Hello Mandy! Hello PB! Welcome in. Welcome in Renegade. Doing okay. How we all doing tonight? How are we feeling this Saturday night? It has been a long time. Uh, how are we? How goes, as they say, how goes the struggle? How goes the joy? I guess the first question is, you know, how we doing? How we feeling? Are we ready to talk about books? It's been a week, but it's Saturday at least. Mood. It is Saturday night. I don't have to go to work tomorrow. I have tomorrow off. It is a day off kind of night. It has been a week. And lots of different things have been happening. Lots of different people have been doing things. I know it's been a stressful week for me. I'm betting it's been a stressful week for my friends. Lots of things have been going on. So I want to talk about books because I like it. And I guess, you know, I should ask a question. So I'm gonna switch over for a second. On last week on YouTube, I posted a poll on my community tab on my YouTube. Hi, by the way, I have a YouTube. All of the VODs go up there. You can watch it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Yay. So I posted a poll on the community tab about the 3 books that I was planning to read for this week, and asked which book which book of this week's book club were you most excited for? Renegade, go get some sleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and you have to work tomorrow. Go to sleep. Not a problem. So I posted this poll on my community tab on YouTube and asked which of this week's books you're most excited for. And they were Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan, The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and The Bombay Prince by Sujata Masi. And Mandy Lady Luck says, I'm doing my year-end wrap-up in my planner and just finished my thoughts on books. Well, we're going to have more thoughts on books. And thank you to whoever voted. I appreciate each and every one of you. The majority of people were excited for The Stardust Thief. A few people were excited for The Bombay Prince. No one voted for Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which was interesting to me. I just felt that that was an interesting, like, little snapshot of where people are, what they're interested in, what they're talking about. And I did read all 3 books. I did read all 3 books. How do we want to do this? How do we want to talk about these? Because we're going to talk about these with spoilers are going to be inapplicable, but first I'm going to talk about them without spoilers, right? Like, we'll talk about them without spoilers, and then we'll talk about them with spoilers. And I have questions. So my first question is, did anybody else read any of these 3 books this week? Did anyone else read along with me on any of these 3 books? I know that I read quickly, so I understand. Yes, without being part of book talk. Just, you know, book clubs. Book clubs I can handle. Book talk drama apparently is not for me. But, so the question is, of the 3 books that I read this week and that I was offering, did anybody else read Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan, Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, or The Bombay Prince by Sujata Masi? Two of those are fantasy novels. One of them is Sudata, the Bombay Prince, is a mystery, historical mystery. So did anybody else read any of these books? Because, forewarning, spoilers will abound, but I will give my thoughts before... Oh good, I'm glad all of these are on your TBR, Mandy. I will give my general thoughts, and when I give to spoiler territory, I will put a spoiler tag up if you want to mute yourself, but I will not give any spoilers beyond, like, the first 100 pages of the book, because, like, I feel like that's a good end point for, not overwhelming people with information, but also giving, a kind of point of reference for people. I think that's what we're gonna do. And because we'll go in order, of the... Hey, I'm glad we're to talk about your TBR. It's really weird. I know people who have TBRs. TBR, for those who don't know, is to be read pile or list. And I am one of those people, like, if I want to read a book, I just pick the book up and read it. I don't make a list of what I haven't read yet. The only exception is if I see a book is going to be in, hasn't been released yet, and in that case, I'll put it on my quote-unquote TBR, but it's not really the same thing, because it's just, it hasn't been released yet. I needed to make a note to remember to go buy the book, or go borrow it from the library. That's where I think about books like that. And I recognize that people have a TBR, and sometimes I think that that's important, and I recognize how different people have different reads. Dandy says, my issue is that I want to read too many and have too many hobbies, need more time. Time is a thief of us all. That is very true. We all could use some more time. Time is a thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break these up by book so that I can do little clips of these and put them on YouTube as shorts as well. But one of the things I'm thinking about is I want to talk about general impressions of these books first, and then I will go into spoiler territory or more details to explain my general thoughts. And I think we're going to start, we'll go in order according to this poll that I did about the from least anticipated to least excited to most excited. So that means we're going to start with Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which is right here. This book, Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Isn't it pretty? It's very pretty cover. It's it's a decent sized book. It's a decent sized paperback. It's 509 pages, a decent sized book. My first general okay, so first of all, general impressions, and then I will go in spoilers and specifics. But again, I will not give spoilers for anything beyond the first 100 pages, because, like, I don't want to ever spoil, like, I won't spoil any of the reveals, I won't spoil any of the major plot points. Sometimes I need to talk about specifics to explain why I feel a certain way about a book. So, I bought this book. Full disclosure, I bought the book because I saw the cover, and then I saw that they had both Daughter of the Moon Goddess and the second one, which is over there, which is the Hunter of the Sun. What is the second book? 10. So the first book is, Heart of the Sun Warrior. Sorry. Okay, so the first book is Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and then the second book is Heart of the Sun Warrior. And I picked up both at the same time because I thought it's pretty. Is a very pretty cover. I also watch a lot of C-dramas. Chinese dramas. And this was like, oh, this is like a Chinese drama, and it's dealing with the daughter of the moon goddess, and I appreciate that. And my overall rule when it comes to books is I have what I call the first page test. If I see a book in the library, in the bookstore, anywhere, and I pick it up, and the blurb on the back kind of interests me, I will read the first page of the actual book, not the prologue or like a foreword or anything like that, but the actual first page of the book. And I'll come back to that question. So I'll read the first page of the book, and like the actual first page, and not just like the foreword or the prologue or anything like that, but the actual first page of the book that is the plot. And if it makes me want to turn the page, then I will pick up the book and go from there. If it doesn't, then I won't pick up the book, because I am now at a point in my life where I am like, I don't need to read books that are difficult, that I am struggling with, that I put through this. So yes, this was a book that I was intrigued by. And my first impression of this book is, I wanted to like it so much more than I did. And that was a real struggle for me, because I think the author is telling an interesting story. I think I like the characters. I like the characters of Jingyin and Li Wei and the other characters that are in this book. I like the C-drama feel of this book. The problem is, for me, and again, this is a for me, this book I understood a lot of what was going on with this book because I watch a lot of Chinese dramas, and I have a background understanding of Chinese mythology as filtered through Chinese dramas, which is important for this book because this book Su Lin Tan, the author, is writing for a mostly Western audience, and it's very obvious she's writing for a Western audience, but she's making assumptions about that audience's knowledge base in this mythology. And so there's a level of that. Coldrake, the back page blurb in Moon, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, is really accurate to the plot of the book, which is good. For those who want to know, a captivating and romantic debut fantasy inspired by the legend of Chang'e, the Chinese moon goddess, in which a young woman's quest to free her mother pits her against the most powerful immortal in the realm. Immortals in the realm, which would be more accurate to say. Growing up on the moon, Jingyin is accustomed to solitude, unaware that she is being hidden from the feared celestial emperor, who exiled her mother for stealing his elixir of immortality. Inaccurate, but we'll get there. But when Jingyin's magic flares and her existence is discovered, she is forced to flee her home, leaving her mother behind. Alone, powerless, and afraid, she makes her way to the Celestial Kingdom, a land of wonder and secrets. Disguising her identity, she seizes an opportunity to learn alongside the Emperor's son, mastering archery and magic, even as a passion flames between her and the prince. To save her mother, Jingyin embarks on a perilous quest, confronting legendary creatures and vicious enemies across the earth and skies. However, when treachery looms and forbidden magic threatens the kingdom, she must challenge the ruthless celestial emperor for her dream, striking a dangerous bargain in which she is torn between losing all she loves and plunging the realm into chaos. So, this is, yes, also high five for all the Chinese dramas. So, this is where I'm kind of gonna, not spoilery, but an explanation of why this book, I struggled with this book, and then I will get to spoilers with it. Because the author of this book assumes that the reader has a level of understanding of what she's talking about in her setting that's no, Cowboy Bebop is not a Chinese drama. I know you're kidding, Coldrake. But this author, Sulin Tan, assumes a level of, or writes as if she assumes a level of understanding and background knowledge in her audience that may not be there. And this becomes a problem with the way in which she writes the book. And that same problem extends into what I consider the pacing of the book. This book, if I want to continue the C-drama comparison, this book was edited down to 12 or 22 episodes and should have been 60. Okay? Like, this book is set up as a part 1 of a duology, and this should be the beginning of, like, at least a 5-book series. The pacing in it is so quick as to be under harm the development of the characters, right? Like, it seriously suffers from almost being, and I said this to the Opera Geek yesterday, that this book is almost at the level of pacing as a script treatment, right? Like, there are scenes in this book, and this is where I will put up a spoiler tag in a minute. There are scenes in this book that take up, I kid you not, a single paragraph of maybe 5 sentences that, if this was a C-drama, would have been a full episode. And I think that's where this is. Like, this is... So Coldrake asks, but isn't that no different from Perveen mystery series, assuming the reader has some brush with historical knowledge of the India in the British occupation period during the 1920s? Which is what we'll get to Sujata Massi's book at the end. But I did mention last week when I introduced that I read the first 2 in the series, The Widows of Malabar Hill and oh god, what's the second book? I'm totally blanking on the title of the second book. But they're both by Sujata Massi. They're both dealing with this woman who is the first female lawyer in the 1920s in India, and she's an Indian lawyer. So the first book definitely suffers. Sujata Massi's first book definitely suffers from assuming a level of knowledge. On one hand, assuming a level of knowledge, but on the other hand, attempting to use Paveen to explain information that the reader needs, that Paveen would know, and that just makes Paveen look frustratingly stupid. Sulin Tan doesn't do that. She assumes a level of knowledge in her writing style and in the way she's phrasing things that becomes obvious that if you don't have a background understanding of these things, you're missing information. Not that you wouldn't follow the story or the plot, but you are just missing Satapur Moonstone. Thank you, Coldrake. The book 2 of Paveen Mysteries is Satapur Moonstone. But for this book, The Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and this is where I'm going to put up a spoiler tag. So if I'm not going to be going beyond the first 100 pages, but it is a spoiler for Daughter of the Moon Goddess. So in this book, I read you the back. And this book opens, I kid you not, chapter 1 is... this book, in the first 100 pages, the main character, Jingyin, Hello, Pope. Welcome in. The main character, Jingyin, goes from describing her life living on the moon with her mother, suddenly finding out that her mother has been, is here imprisoned on the moon because she took her husband's pill of immortality that was granted by the Celestial Emperor and Empress for his service to on the mortal realm. And there's a reason, and she gives the reason why. And I do give Su Lin Tan credit, because even in Chinese mythology, that particular myth about the moon goddess, there are like 4 different versions of it, and it's kind of like assumed that no one really knows. She picks an answer and she goes with that description and that answer in the first 20 pages. Like, she tells you, this is the story we're going with. She has Chang'e tell her daughter Jingyin exactly why she took the pill, and it's the celestial bunny on the moon is actually technically Japanese, but we'll move on. So she chooses which story that she'll go with, and she will go from there, and that's the story that she's going to go with. That's fine. But in the first 100 pages, we go from Jingyin's description of her life on the moon, how she's growing up, finding out that her mother's been imprisoned here, finding out that she shouldn't do magic, finding out, oh wait, that the celestial, or she accidentally reveals her existence to the point that the Celestial Empress comes because she feels a shift in the magic on the moon and therefore is convinced that perhaps her mother is breaking the terms of her imprisonment, to fleeing the Celestial Empress, falling off of a cloud into the Celestial Empire, disguising herself, turning herself into a serving lady of an immortal noble of the Celestial Empire, suffering under this as the lady's maid to this spoiled brat lady of the Celestial Empire, discovering the Crown Prince, having their first interaction where they become friends of the 100 Prince, participating in a competition where the winner of the competition will be chosen as the companion to the Crown Prince and his study buddy, winning that competition, becoming the study companion to the Crown Prince, learning that she has skills in archery, and then participating in, making a bet with the Crown Prince, working as the Crown Prince's companion, and then the results of that bet. That's the first 100 pages of this book. That's not even, I kid you not. That's this much of this... That's this much of this book, and that's right. It's just no. It's and that's the problem. The pacing in this book is written as if it's a script treatment, and by that I mean dialogue is in depth for certain scenes. Individual scenes are dialogue in depth, but anything that is action or description is very, very brief and very, very short. Whereas if this was almost as if this was the shooting script for something, you'd be like, oh, there's just these two lines here, and we know that the actors are going to kill it, and then the director will decide how exactly it's going to be shot and framed, and that will be it. So, for me, that's not really enjoyable, right? That's just not... Yeah, exactly. If it was written for a book, if you let some of these scenes breathe, it would be twice as long, or 3 times as long even. That's why I'm saying, this was published as a duology, and probably could have been a 5-book series. You could have had an entire book just dedicated to Jingyin's becoming the Crown Prince's best friend, companion, and they're growing learning from each other relationship before the rest of the plot begins. That could have been an entire book in and of itself. And I think this is a case of either the editor was very aggressive in editing, or the author thought that they needed to cover way so much background information to get to the quote-unquote plot. But I think this is a case of that the book suffers from it. So for an example, right? Remember how I said that there is a point at which so this is actually literally page 102 of this book, right? 102. This is page 102 of this book. And I said that there was a bet because she had never partaken in archery before, and she's learning archery, and she bets that she can beat the crown prince in an archery competition in 3 months. So literally, I'm going to read you this description. "It's been 3 months, did you forget?" Li Wei called out. My spirits sank as I recalled my reckless wager. Still, I plastered a bright smile as I took the bow from him. Of course not. What are the terms? 3 arrows each, he proposed. The winner is whoever scores the most points. I nodded in acceptance, moving to stand behind the line. His arrow whistled as it flew toward the target, but I averted my gaze. His performance was a distraction I could ill afford. Keeping my attention upon the board, I released the first arrow, piercing the target in the center. The second followed in its trail into the crimson eye of the board, and my last arrow split the former right down its middle. Having scored 3 perfect strikes, my confidence swelled, until I saw Li Wei's board, a mirror of my own. Okay, that is a paragraph that is literally 6 sentences dedicated to the majority of this archery competition. And they're brief. They're short sentences, right? Like they're not very descriptive. They're very factual depictions, which would have been great for a shooting script where, there's going to be intercutting between the emotional face of the girl. There'll be rising tension in the emotion. There'll be, swelling music, cutting back and forth between her and the prince. But this scene is literally 6 paragraphs. It then goes on to say, to go to the rest to figure out who the actual winner is. General Zhang Yun frowned, unable to decide the victor. Striding to the weapons rack, he pulled out a clay disc no bigger than my fist. Our advanced archers use this to practice their skills. When the disc is released, it will soar away. The first person who shoots it down will be the winner. I groaned inwardly. I did not have much experience with moving targets. Perhaps this is too difficult for Jing Yin, Li Wei said. Pride got the better of me. It's fine, I said curtly, drawing an arrow through my bow. General Zhang Yun threw the disc high. It shot through the air, faster than anticipated. I blinked, half a heartbeat of hesitation, my arrow already hurtling towards the soaring disc, as Li Wei's gold-feathered arrow shattered the clay. Like, this is literally just describing storyboards. Or describing terms that will show up as later points. And while I'm never a big fan of first-person narrative to begin with, but I was willing to give this a chance, because sometimes it can be done well. The characters here are very good. The richness of the Celestial Empire is good, but, I will read the sequel just so I know where they're ending the story and where they're going to go. Also, I like the characters, but this book is very much for my opinion, missing detail. Like, this could have been 5 books, and it would not have suffered from being that long. But if you're willing to you know, and I think some of the people who don't have a sound grounding in Chinese mythology might not get some of the references that are kind of important to understand the plot, particularly her interactions with the princes and the Celestial Emperor and the Celestial Empress and all of these things. But I like to give people information and then say they might enjoy it. People might enjoy it and might find pleasure in it. I will finish this series, this duology, because there's only one more book, and I have to see what they're doing. But it's not a long-term commitment for me. That'll be it. Okay, I'm turning off the spoiler tag. Yeah, it's a national bestseller, so it must be good. Well, like, a national bestseller just means you sold a lot of copies. And my point is, there are books out there for every type of reader. For me, this was an okay book that could have been great. And I felt that, right? Like, I felt like this was just an okay book that could have been great if either the author or the editor had been willing to let the story breathe, let the depictions be expansive. You're dealing with a wide history and very rich, luscious world that you could have done a lot of description with. And it just seems like that was not the choice that this author went with. So that is Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I will now entertain questions about Daughter of the Moon Goddess. And Mandy, if you're still here, you can come back now. So Kolchak asks a very interesting question. With all the books we have read over the years, are we reading with a jaded eye instead of entering with an open mind of wonder as a beginning reader? That's a possibility, but by the same token, I feel that in this case, not having enough, me knowing enough that I know that there are problems with the book means that I feel like I'm missing even more. But the pacing, I feel, would be a thing that would exist regardless of who was reading. And I have noticed that people have less patience now, that pacing for film, you know, it's that thing about, like, shorts and reels and the short film, you know, short clips on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube always get more views, and the algorithm pushes the shorter thing because you want to get whatever clips. But I feel like this is a case of not that. This is a case of very pared down writing, very just almost bullet point writing, right? Like that depiction of what is one of the most important moments for the beginning interaction between Li Wei and Jingyan is just so pared down that it's literally just a shooting script, right? Like these are the three things that will happen, and we'll let the director of photography, you know, and the cinematographer point out where these shots are going to go and how the framing's going to be, and it doesn't need require dialogue or any depictions. It's fine. Okay. All right. So that is my opinion of Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which was the least anticipated of the um, uh, least anticipated of the three books we were going to talk about. Um, the number two on that list, going up with 40% of the vote, was Sujata Masi's book three in the Paveen mystery series, The Bombay Prince. So, one of the things I mentioned during the last week's discussion, when I first started talking about Sujata Masi and reading Paveen's The Widows of Malabar Hill and the Sujatapur Moonstone, is that the first book definitely suffered from the author attempting to use Paveen to explain things that she needed the audience to know with but Paveen would have known, with the side effect of having Paveen look very, very like, girl, I just want to slap you for being stupid at points. But the mystery was really, really good. Oh, I'm so sorry with that, Coldrake. I got mine through Barnes and Noble because the library didn't have it either, but that's okay. I read it. I read the next two through the library. But The Bombay Prince is book three in the series. And starting from Sujatapur Moonstone through The Bombay Prince, they do a good job of she gets better with each book, of Paveen not being quite so such a problem, that she's still an actual person that would exist within that time period. There's very little, like, there's such a short period between the end of book one and the beginning of book two, and then into the beginning of book three, that you're like, okay, so this is, we don't, once you've read the first two, you can kind of, I'm getting the impression that eventually you'll be able to read them in any order after the first two, and it won't really matter. Like, it'll kind of matter because there's some, like, little bits of carryover from from one book to the next, but overall, the individual books are very self-contained, as it were, so you don't need to worry so much about how they go forward. Yeah, going from, like, to a Hercule Poirot, or versus a Miss Marple, where each individual book is previous. She's much better as a writer. I think she's definitely, it's very obvious that The Widows of Malabar Hill is like a first book problems that get much better with the later books. Probably gets a better editor, helps her refocus, and all of those things, which is a good thing. All of that is a good thing. The Bombay Prince is very good, and we'll just use her website here for the back of the blurb, because that's what we'll talk about. India's only female lawyer, Praveen Mistry, is compelled to bring justice to the family of a murdered female Parsi student, just as Bombay's streets erupt in riots to protest British colonial rule. Sujata Masi is back with this third installment to the Agatha and Mary Higgins Clark Award winning series set in 1920s Bombay. November 1921. Edward VIII, Prince of Wales and future ruler of India, is arriving in Bombay to begin a 4-month tour. The Indian subcontinent is chafing under British rule, and Bombay solicitor Parveen Mistry isn't surprised when local unrest over the royal arrival spirals into riots. But she's horrified by the death of Freni Cutting Master, an 18-year-old Parsi student who falls from a second-floor gallery just as the prince's grand procession is passing by her college. Freni had come for a legal consultation just days before her death, and what she finds makes Parveen suspicious that her death was not an accident. Feeling guilty for failing to have helped Freni in life, Parveen steps forward to assist Freni's family in the fraught dealings of the coroner's inquest. When Freni's death is ruled murder, Parveen knows she can't rest until she sees justice done. But Bombay is erupting. As armed British Secret Service march the streets, rioters attack anyone with perceived British connections, and desperate shopkeepers destroy their own wares so they will not be targets of racial violence. Can Parveen help a suffering family when her own is in danger? And then, brilliant descriptions of how good this book is. All of which is true. I really enjoyed this book. I felt that this was a really, really good installment in the series. I will not be doing a spoiler section on this one, because it's a mystery, right? Like it's not a very long book. None of the Parveen mysteries are very long. They're relatively short. I mean, they're a mystery series short. They're like 350, 400 pages or something. Not very long. A decent size. But they are, the mystery is really, really good, and really well written, and Parveen is definitely less of, God, why are you so stupid, and I can't stand you moments. A lot less of that in this book. I think Sujata Massey has definitely gotten to a point where she is writing, like, she has found her groove, she's found her writing stride, she's found a good editor to help her focus. I think the book is very well structured. The pacing in this book definitely is a little bit faster than Sujatapur Moonstone. And definitely a little bit faster than The Widows of Malabar Hill, but still feels enough time that there's points to breathe in the book. I would recommend this series. Like, read the first book is definitely the weakest by far, but definitely has been improving over and over and over as she goes, getting better and better at how she writes and how she structures her explanations, and balancing the complexity of having a setting and time period where the majority of her audience, who are Americans and Western Europeans, probably don't know a whole lot about 1922 and 1921 in Bombay, India, and the effects of the occupation and the Raj and all of these things. And so she does a good job of balancing what she needs the audience to know, so to make the world feel real, while also not feeling like she's lore dumping. And I feel that if you have any enjoyment for historical mysteries, you have anything that you really, really, really like about female, like a 1920s style historical setting mystery, that kind of glitz and glamour, Agatha Christie style writing, focused kind of mystery, go read all of these books. They're very, very well written. They're very, very well structured. I think they're really good. Coldrake says, And Nasi does a great job of peppering in those little bits of India society, caste system, religious sects to educate without lecturing and not take away from the action of the moment. So Kolchak also says, I was not certain about it going in, plus I read 98% science fiction and fantasy, not so much mystery. I was pleasantly surprised and have enjoyed it so far. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I would definitely say that this series is very much a focal point and a good introduction to the history of the period. Some very interesting deviations from the period, because again, Praveen is a lawyer, or a female lawyer, in a time period where that wasn't a very common, regardless of where you were, but even less so in the heavily caste and gender stratified society of 1920s India. It is well done. Oh, Mandy, I think you would really like this. Again, the mysteries are very, very well written. They're a engaging read. The main character gets better as the author kind of gets used to writing, but even through the first book, where both my mom and I were kind of doing these as a co-read kind of thing, you know, reading them and talking about them kind of thing, we both agree of the opinion of, like, even though we didn't like Praveen in the first book, the mystery was good enough that we went back and were reading through the rest of it and were willing to read the second book. And by book 2, she had gotten a lot better. The author had gotten a lot better at editing, focusing on all these things, all of these good things. And then now in book 3, The Bombay Prince, which came out in 2022, 2023, really, really good. It came out like last year. And then book 4 is came out in 2021, and then The Mistresses of Bhatia House came out this year. So, which I haven't read yet, which is book 4 in this series. And the author is definitely improving vastly on her writing style, on her structure, but the mysteries are still really, really the focus of the books, and are really good mysteries. Like, you know how sometimes you're willing to suffer through a not so great story as long as the mystery itself, like the plot of the mystery, is engaging? Like, I have sat through some Hallmark mystery movies, not because I thought the movie was good, and not because I liked the main character, but because the mystery was engaging enough that I was willing to see where it went. Praveen is so much better than that, and these books are absolutely joyful. I'm gonna drop in the chat, I'm just gonna drop the link to Sajada Masi's site so that people can go and look these up and decide if they like them. She's also written a bunch of books set in Japan, and she has you know, a degree in writing, and she's a very interesting person. Like, her research is on point, and her detailed explanation of things is really, really good, to the point that I'm like, yeah, okay, I want to know more about this. And not in the books I've been borrowing from the library, because those editions are usually like hardcover editions, but if you go to the Barnes and Noble and get the paperback editions of her books, they've been Del Rey, I think Del Rey is the publisher, whoever their publisher is, they've been printing like book club sections at the back for like read along questions for you and other people that you've been reading them with, to kind of like think about the history and the setting and the plot and then the mystery and then the reveal at the end, and all of that gets kind of interwoven in this point at the back end of the story that's kind of just like there, and it's, I think, really, really well done, and it's to the benefit of everybody. Yes, Cadfile. Oh my god, just, I love Cadfile. I am a massive Cadfile nerd. I have read every single Cadfile book. I have seen all of the Cadfile TV series, movies. I have watched Derek Jacobi will eternally be Cadfile. Thank you very much. If you liked Cadfile, oh god, yes, I loved it when they were on PBS and I could just watch them on Masterpiece Mysteries. And I would say that if you are a fan of like the Cadfile series, Sujata Massey does an equally good job of setting the world of the book. And I hesitate to use it because she's using a historical time period in place, but it really is the world of the book. The setting of the book is very well researched, very well detailed. You can learn a lot about the history of this time period just by reading the book and the flavor text that she will throw in places. I would also say Mandy, if you do actually go to Barnes & Noble or any other bookstore that might have this particular author, check in advance, because I had to wait a couple weeks or order in specifically at my local Barnes & Noble to get book 1, because they always had because they had just gotten they had 3 and 4, and I was like, can I please get book 1? Yeah, I've heard of that Coldrake. Coldrake says, I can't find it anymore, but somebody once did a large format book with color plates of the plants and herbs Brother Cadfile would have grown in his monastery garden, used for his healing herbs and potions. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. Yeah, Mandy, I would just take the time to check in advance because it was a struggle for me. But, you know, sometimes that happens, and I've noticed that with like Barnes & Noble and other books. They don't have book 1 all the time, which I feel is a problem, because they carry like 3 and 4, or whichever the current book of the series has been released, particularly if you're reading a fantasy series or a sci-fi series or something like that, and you're like, that's great, but I didn't know that this series existed, so now I've just been seeing book 3, this looks really good, I want to read book 1, but you don't have it. Please, booksellers, even if you don't have all, of the books in the series, even if you decide that, you know, you're only selling 1 or 2 books each you can only stock 1 or 2 books at a time of that series, please stock at least 1 volume of book 1 every time you get a new book in the series. That way for new readers can go and discover it and enjoy it. Yes, and I do agree with Coldrake that Ellis Peters, who is the author of the Cadfile series, definitely improves from book to book and masters their craft as they go. And I feel that Sujata Massey is definitely doing that with the Paveen series, at least mastering the craft of writing that particular character. And it definitely is, even then, like, I never hated Praveen. I just was frustrated with her and at times wanted to punch her or slap her across the face. But I never hated her. Like, there were characters I straight up hated and, like, stopped reading the book. That was never this case. This was a case of, okay. Can we please not? Okay. Okay. Alright. So that is my opinions on, the Bombay Prince and the, setting that comes from that. And Sujata Massey's series in general, which I firmly recommend, and I think you'd actually like it, Mandy. I think a couple of other people would actually enjoy it and would go from there. But I have a paperweight on my desk, which I will move once I am done with the Bombay Prince. Paperweight? What paperweight? It is the next book we're going to be talking about. It is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. You'll see that I have flags here because, again, this book was the most, people were most excited about reading this book. And of the three books, I liked both this one and The Bombay Prince the best. I did not, again, I explained why I have some complicated feelings about the daughter of the moon goddess. But the book for the Stardust Thief, I will definitely be talking about spoilers at some point, which is why I'm going to put the spoiler tag up. But we're going to start, again, like everyone else that we've done this way so far, we are going to talk about it in general terminology. First things first, yes, go read this book. Go read and enjoy this book. I am looking forward to the next book in this series a whole lot. This is a great book, written by a great woman of color, set in a very unique world, and it follows the tradition of mythical retellings that you get a whole lot of people talking about, like mythical retellings of Greek myth and all of these things. This is, if you have any understanding and history with 1001 Arabian Nights and Scheherazade and the world of those stories, it benefits to you to understand this book, but you don't need to. Unlike Daughter of the Moon Goddess, where I felt the way the book was written, you needed to have an understanding of sea dramas and Chinese mythology to really appreciate where the plot points were going. Chelsea Abdullah does a fabulous job of explaining to you as the reader all of the important points that are necessary in this book for you to understand the world in which it's set. But by the same token, but if you have an understanding of that mythology or any of that history or any of that literature going previously, it just further builds up the world. So Coldrake says, we've all watched Disney's Aladdin. That's all the Arabian background we need, right? I mean... You could at least mention, Sinbad, right? Sinbad also exists. Yeah, the 1960s Sinbad movies. Hey, Cyber Nation Uncensored, welcome in. We're talking books. We're talking really good books. And in this case, we're talking about The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. I loved the characters in this book. I loved the story of this book. I loved the moral complex choices that the characters have to go through in this book. I appreciated, unlike Daughters of the Moon Goddess, this book in the first 100 pages, like, this is it's interestingly that this book is almost shorter It's only 469 pages. It has, however, some really great points where, like, in-world documents are entered into the book. It changes points of view through multiple characters throughout the book, but done in a really, really good way. One of the things that I've always felt about A Song of Ice and Fire is that George R.R. Martin is shifting character viewpoints when he thinks it benefits the plot and not when it really does benefit the plot. Like, instead of it being about, how to phrase this, instead of it being about how the, you know, what unique things seeing things through Catelyn Stark's viewpoint give you as the reader, all you're really doing is getting points, a plot's point that you can't get from anybody else, rather than having her opinions affect the way it's viewed. Chelsea Abdullah's switching from Luli to Mazin to Aisha and kind of Omar, but not really Omar. Mostly, technically Omar isn't really a point of view character, even though he is a point of view character, which is kind of awkward. You never actually see it from his perspective, but he is so important that you know, you can kind of just, his world, you know, his viewpoint is the most, it is so impactful, but you never see it from his actual viewpoint, and it's so interestingly and so well written. But switching between Luli and Aisha and Mazin really drive home how this group of people shape the world. Yeah, it felt... Culture, like, my opinion about George R.R. Martin is basically like, Game of Thrones is a really great world building, but he didn't know how he's writing the plot, and he doesn't understand his own world building because of it. But this book, I'm going to put the spoiler tag up for at the moment. Let me go click that spoiler tag. Spoilers. We're going to talk about spoilers. We're going to talk about how much I love this book, how much I laughed at various points of this book. And again, I only tagged the first 100 pages, or points within the first 100 pages. Actually, I think within the first 60. And because I think these are interesting points that kind of highlight what I'm talking about, while not, notice I'm going to say this, not overwhelming you with plot and detracting you from the story. So, first thing I want to mention is I think the book is well written. I think each of the point of view characters, Luli, Aisha, Mazin, all have their own voices. They are very, very distinct voices. You know who is speaking and whose point of view you're going to get when the title header says, oh, it's by this person, and you're like, oh, okay. It's this point of view, I'm going to get this kind of writing. Their point of views are consistent. That doesn't mean that they all know all of the information in the book. There is no third-person omniscient narrator. All of these characters are giving their point of views, but they're third-person point of views that are kind of interesting because they don't know everything that's going on in the book. And because of that, there are some choices that are made that are just... you as a reader are like, oh my god, this is going to go horribly. But you, character, don't know what I know about this other character's choice. So you don't know what's going to happen, but I know what's going to happen, and it's going to be bad. But in the best way. Like, there are multiple moments like that in this book. And I think it's very well done and very well written and very well structured for that. Also, just, it's enjoyable. All right, so where is my first tab? I have multiple tabs. Okay. So, I put the spoiler tag up? Yeah, I did. Okay. Full disclosure, my favorite character in this book is Kadir. Kadir is my favorite character. I just want to spend all of the time listening to Kadir's snark. Exactly. Stardust Thief takes the concept of 1001 Arabian Nights, the tales, the stories, what's going on in here, and uses it as a framework to work in the background with the main characters that she's created. And God, has she done a brilliant job. Kadir is my favorite character. Kadir is like full on. I have to go look up art for Kadir. Is both his djinn form and his magical talking lizard form, because it is great. But Kadir is the djinn who saved Luli as a young adult child. Mazen's not bad, but Kadir is my favorite. Look, my second favorite character is also Omar, so what does that tell you about me? If you know, you know. But Kadir is the djinn who saved Luli as a teen child, and is her bodyguard / caretaker / Alfred, basically. And this is where one of the, like, these are little moments of why Kadir is legitimately the best. Kadir made a sound in his throat that might have been a cough but sounded like a wheeze. Remember, go into the tavern through the back door this time. Luli sighed. Yes. She diverted her attention to the tavern, an unspectacular 2-story building with a slanted, dilapidated roof. Lanterns hung from the low scaffolding, illuminating dusty glass windows. Luli could just barely make out the drunken crowds and hooting, trilling inside. It was the beginning of the cold season, which meant Dahlia had just received a new shipment of wine, and that was cause for celebration. Luli had no doubt the revelers were drinking themselves into a stupor. Do not make the same mistake as last time. Luli flicked his tail, but Kadir continued undeterred. No one will notice a girl plain as me, you said, and then I had to bite a man. And that's it. Literally. You don't get any further description about what that scene was. Just that Kadir, as a magical talking lizard, had to bite a man in defense of Luli. And I'm like, this tells you a lot about their dynamic. Kadir's viewpoint on protecting her. Also, that Kadir is basically a humanoid cat. It is great. Flipping forward to my next tag, further adventures in how great Kadir is. I am but a single djinn, he would say. I cannot change your land's prejudices. It was an infuriating answer because it wasn't an answer, but she had long ago learned that Kadir was not like her. While she frequently stuck her nose into others' business, Kadir never involved himself unless it was necessary. It was strange how they could both be so distant from people, yet have such different ways of coexisting with them. Kadir said. You are suspiciously quiet. Luli blew a loose curl out of her eyes. I'm thinking. About you. Kadir frowned. Now I'm even more concerned. You should stop that. The worrying, I mean. It's going to give your ageless skin wrinkles. The edges of Kadir's lips curled ever so slightly. I have aged more in the 9 years I have known you than in the hundreds I have lived before our meeting. Luli grabbed a cushion off the floor and threw it at him. She grumbled when he caught it and set it on his lap. How old are you anyway? The half-smile was still on his lips. Ancient. It's no wonder you're so cynical. You should take more naps. They might improve your temperament. Like, how can you just not? Their entire relationship is summed up in those two passages. It is brilliantly written to show you the depth of their comfort with each other, their background, the world of their history with each other, but it doesn't set you it doesn't assume that you need any further knowledge, because the characters don't need to explain anything. You can ask and find out more information, but at the same time, it gives you enough that you understand and that you know. I love everything about it. My second favorite character is... Well, let me phrase that. I have a tie for my second favorite character. My second favorite character, who's definitely probably an antagonistic asshole, is Omar. Who is Omar, the king of the 40 thieves, who's really the crown prince and heir to the sultan, but the 40 thieves are his band of hunters and trackers of jinn that he goes out and kills jinn with. But he is an asshole of the best order. Like, I kid you not, he is an asshole. And look, I understand my appreciation for sarcastic assholes. Not all of them. Hi, Sly, welcome in. But some of them. But here, look. Omar is never a point of view character. He is never a point of view character. However, after Mazen is almost enthralled and enchanted and then killed by a jinn who's trying to get revenge on Omar for all of the jinn that Omar has killed, and Mazen, who is the younger prince, had snuck out of the palace and did all of these things and was almost enthralled and enchanted, and comes back. And this is the conversation between Mazen and, Mazen was beginning to feel faint. What are you talking about? A woman followed you into the noble quarter. I thought you'd broken her heart the way she was chasing you. Layla. Or the Shadow Jinn? Mazen shook off his fear before it grew roots. He focused on Omar's words, what they implied. You were following me because you were tracking a jinn, weren't you? Omar didn't even bat an eyelash. A valiant pastime, yes? Mazen could hear the thud of his heartbeat in his ears. You knew there was a jinn in the city when I left the palace. You could have told me it was out for your blood. For our blood. Omar shrugged. I may have forgotten to mention it. Mazen's fear burned away, replaced with anger that shot through his veins like ice. He moved without thinking, grabbing the collar of his brother's tunic and shoving him into the column. This is no laughing matter, you ass. I could have died. His hand quivered as he looked into his brother's eyes. Even now they sparkled with amusement. Mazen wanted to punch him. On the contrary, I find it quite entertaining. Omar set his hand atop Mazen's. Mazen flinched at the coldness of his fingers. Seeing you angry is always a good time, Aki. But, as always, you are concerned about the wrong things. Let me worry about the jinn. You should worry about father finding out what happened. Imagine what he would do if he realized that you had not only left the palace, but were attacked in doing so. Omar pried Mazen's fingers from his tunic. You think he would give you a second chance? No, he will do to you what he has done to Hakim. He will make you a prisoner in this palace. There would be no escape, not even with guards. Mazen stepped away. Omar's gaze became thoughtful, as if he could read all of the insecurities in Mazen's heart. Remember, Aki, which of us has the upper hand? Omar smiled pleasantly, tucked his hands into his pockets, and walked away. Mazen watched him go, mute. No argument could save him from this predicament. It would not matter if he proved Omar's incompetence as a hunter to his father. Ultimately, Omar would be scolded, and Mazen would be trapped. It was a long time before he swallowed his dread and returned to his room. Yeah, Omar pushes buttons. Omar pushes buttons of the best order. Like, and then there's, like, you're just, you sit here and you want to hate that man with a passion, but he's just so, like, dude, you want to punch Omar in the face. Multiple times you want to punch Omar in the face. But then he's not wrong. And you're like, God damn it, you're an asshole. But you're a right asshole, which sucks. So yeah, Kadir, then Omar, and then to round out, but he's not wrong, yeah, which makes you hate him, like, hate that you like him, exactly, like, God, why are you not, like, you're an asshole, but you're not wrong, but you're an asshole, fuck. It is very good. And then you have one of the most interesting characters, right? Like, Kadir and Omar are my favorite characters, but one of the most interesting characters, aside from Luli and is Aisha. And Aisha is one of the 40 thieves that works for Omar, who is actually, you know, she killed people for a living. It's fine. So she has been sent, Omar sends her to, you know, talk with the soldiers that are supposed to protect the city and, you know, kind of pass a message, right? So this is Omar has asked Aisha to pass a message to a soldier. But then he clamped his jaw shut and stepped away from her, eyes flashing. Why does the prince not deliver this message to me himself? Because he's a royal pain in the ass, she thought. Or, I mean, she's thinking because it's in italics. Ask him yourself. I wasn't sent here to answer your questions. She moved towards the door and managed only a single step before the Qaid blocked her way. Tell your prince there are no holes in my security. My men are more than capable of protecting the city. We do not want your help. We do not need it. Aisha could have laughed in his face. All these fools ever did was throw people in the bowels and cringe at silver blood. Even the Sultan knew his men were incompetent. Gods knew they'd been unable to protect his late wife. Aisha wasn't conceited enough to call herself a hero, but at least she had never let any of her targets escape. Not since she picked up a blade and promised to kill them all, anyway. His Majesty seems to think otherwise. Perhaps it is all your pleading. A competent leader wouldn't need to build his case with words. His actions would speak for him. She briskly sidestepped the Qaid and headed for the door. The man was visibly shaking with rage, and when he turned toward her, it was with a speed that made her tense. Like, I just appreciate how much of a bitch she is. No, I will not be cosplaying as Aisha. There will be other people, but... There will be other people. But this book, Assassin of Sharp Dagger, or 6, she has... like, there's a scene in the book, I believe, where she counts how many daggers she has on her. This book, recommend. Firmly recommend this book. Alright, I will take the spoiler tag off for those who are coming back. But yes, I firmly recommend this book. I think it is a really great read. It's a really fast-paced read, too. It's very interesting. It is an interesting... If you enjoy 1001 Arabian Nights, if you've know anything of the story of the Shahrazad and this, the 1001 Arabian Nights, or any background in that period of mythology, Middle Eastern, Persian mythology, you will greatly appreciate this book even more, but the story is so good and the characters are so good, you will enjoy it anyways. Yeah. Can't wait for book 2. Looking forward to it. 10 out of 10. Firmly recommend. Okay. So, how are we doing? Questions so far. Kolchak says, now it makes me wonder if Prax got to see that 3,000 Years of Longing with Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. I thought 3,000 Years of Longing has Idris Elba in it? I thought it had, Oh, I missed... Oh, that version. Yeah, okay. No, I did not get to see this one, and apparently I need to see it now. Idris Elba is a djinn, and I did not know that this existed, so thank you very much. I was unaware that this was a thing, and now I need to go see it. Thank you so much, Coldrake. I will definitely have to look that up. But it is a very, very, very... But, back to Stardust Thief. Really, really good. Firmly recommend. Encourage you to go watch it, or go read it, and go enjoy the book for what it is, and the enjoyment that it has, and brings to people. I also think that, yeah, well worth it. Well worth it. I would also recommend this particular book, both this book and, I would also recommend, if you are a person who can listen to audiobooks. I struggle with audiobooks because of my particular learning disability, deals with a sound-symbol relationships problem and an auditory processing issue. So, audiobooks are very difficult for me to just process and understand. But if you are a person for whom that is not a problem, that you enjoy audiobooks, I recommend perhaps listening to this as an audiobook. Because Chelsea Abdullah brilliantly interweaves and uses Arabic terms throughout the book, but they're not Arabic terms that need any definition or translation. So if you can listen to the audiobook, it would be a good place to at least know how those words are being pronounced, or should be pronounced, I guess is the more accurate term. Yeah, I think that's another big thing is like who is the reader? Um, uh, yeah. Um, yes, and then the book two, which is the Ashfire King, is coming in 2024. Um, I don't know who the excuse me. I don't know who the audiobook reader is for Stardust Thief. But if there is one, I would just listen to it and see where you could find out because it could be very enjoyable. All right. So that's all three books we read for this week. And before we get into discussion of other things we've been reading, anything else like that, or further recommendations, or what I plan to read for next week, I'm going to take a short break, stretch, bio, get some more water because I don't currently have any, and I'll probably run an ad break, but we'll be back in like 5, maybe 10 minutes, and I'll see you in a bit, everybody. everybody. Welcome back. Ooh, that's a little weird. Okay. How we doing? How we feeling? Hope you're doing okay. So we talked about the 3 books that I read for this week for book club, which were Sulin Tan's Daughter of the Moon Goddess, Chelsea Abdullah's Stardust Thief, and Sujata Massi's Bombay Prince. So, of the 3, I really liked Chelsea Abdullah's Stardust Thief. I really enjoyed The Bombay Prince by Sujata Massi. I was not that big a fan of Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I will read the second book in the duology just to finish the story, but it's not a really pressing book for me. It's like there, and I will probably read it sometime in the near future, but it's not on the immediate horizon kind of thing. But I thought we should talk about books that we're going to read for next week. And I've got 3 of them. And hello, Hawkeye. Hope the Nutcracker is having you're enjoying the Nutcracker. The ballet, at least. So I picked the 3 books that I'm going to read for next week. And I'm going to put up a similar poll on YouTube where I ask, what people's most anticipated, which one they're most excited for, that kind of thing. So, first up, a book that I was hoping to be able to read this week but wasn't going to get in time is Grief of Stones, which is Catherine Anderson. It is the direct sequel to Witness for the Dead, which is part of the same universe and world as the Goblin Emperor. These are kind of steampunk fantasy murder mysteries where the main character is a priest. This is Grief of Stones and Witness for the Dead. The main character is a priest for the god of death, and his job is to witness for the dead, literally. As a witness for the dead, Thara Selahar can speak to the recently departed, see the last thing they saw, know the last thought they had, experience the last thing they felt. It is his duty to use that ability to ascertain the intent of the dead and to find the killers of the murdered. Chelahar's time in the city of Amalo has brought him both friends and enemies, and no little notoriety. Now, when solving the murder of a marquise raises more questions than it answers, he finds himself exploring Amalo's dark underside. His investigations lead him to Semchiklarana School for Foundling Girls, where all is not as it seems. Discovering the truth about its headmistress will lead Chelahar deep into the city's history and into the shattering depths of the loss he fears the most. So again, this is a short book, like 245 pages. Interesting, probably light-ish read for what it is. Can I even give you some highlights from the first page? I will give you, like, the first sentence, but anything... I can't even do that because the first sentence of this book shows that it is a direct sequel to Witness for the Dead. And a thing that's revealed in Witness for the Dead is basically the beginning and opening of this book. So I'm really looking forward to reading this, The Grief of Stones. and I think it will be a really great read. I'm loving the character of Chelahar, or Salahar, however you pronounce his name. I think he is a very interesting character. 10 out of 10 recommend Witness for the Dead. Fully intend to read this. We'll probably finish this in like a couple hours. I love this author. I also love the world that she's created. This kind of tension between goblins and elves, and what that means. There's no humans in this world. There are no other species in this world. There are just goblins and elves, and it really is a very interesting kind of like tension that exists that you don't always understand, and it's intentional. But yes, I think this is the best. Definitely will enjoy reading this. Also a sequel that I'm going to read this week is going to be Ancillary Sword. Oh, sorry. The Ancillary Sword by Ann Leckie. This is the direct sequel to Ancillary Justice. This is a science fiction book where the main character is a body that houses a portion of what was a massive ship AI that the ship used bodies of the dead to do tasks around the ship or other things as necessary that required, opposable thumbs rather than being a giant troops transport, like aircraft carrier kind of thing. But the main character, the rest of the ship has been destroyed. All of the other quote-unquote portions of the AI have been destroyed. And the main character, so like it is one of the most interesting viewpoints on a main character, and so Ann Leckie does a fabulous job of making a character that is so utterly alien in the way that their thought process functions. They are not human. They don't think like humans. They don't, like, they are bipedal and they are humanoid. They use a human body, but they are not humans. And what that means is very interesting. Then you've got the underlying tension of an expansionist human empire that's coming into conflict with an expansionist truly alien life form empire, and how those tensions are resolving or not resolving. But Ancillary Sword is the direct sequel to Ancillary Justice, and I read that in a couple hours and just was one of my favorite reads of the year. And I laughed, and there were a couple places where I had to stop and like reread a sentence to kind of make sure that I was understanding who the speaker was and who the character was and what the character was getting into. But Ann Leckie is just a brilliant author. So the back of this book is, Breck is a soldier who used to be a warship. Once a weapon of conquest controlling thousands of minds, now she has only a single body and serves the Emperor. With a new ship and a troublesome crew, Breck is ordered to go to the only place in the galaxy she would agree to go. Athiax Station, to protect the family of lieutenants she once knew. A lieutenant she murdered in cold blood. And you're just like, yay. Also, I feel like that's a disingenuous point because while Breck uses she as the default pronoun, where we would lots of people would use a male default pronoun, Breck repeatedly states that they don't understand gender and they can't tell the difference of sex or gender. So the like whoever wrote the blurb on the back, who is 9 times out of 10 not the author, like, right, like Anne Leckie did not write the blurb on the back of this book. I feel like that's a disingenuous because Breck, who is the warship, or the portion of the AI that ran the warship and is now stuck in a humanoid body, who is, I guess, technically female presenting, doesn't identify as female and doesn't use female pronouns, is just occasionally doesn't stop other people from using female pronouns about them, but they themselves don't identify that way. So because they're an AI that was a warship, like, it's like asking the AI of the Enterprise, do you believe in binary gender, when you literally are identifying yourself as a ship. I can't wait to read this book. I think this book will be really good. I think it will have a lot of what I really enjoyed about the first book. Like, the first book was really good, and I read that in a really short period of time. I'm looking forward to seeing how this one goes. I think it would be a really great, from everything I've heard and everything I've read, it's a really great book 2 to a series that's going to be really quite enjoyable. We're getting more about Breck. We're going to get more about the humans that they may have worked with and they feel concern for, maybe. And probably more of this overarching plot dealing with the Emperor that may or may not be, a good guy, sort of. It's complicated. Like, the Emperor is one of the most interestingly complicated figures. If you have ever read anything about Warhammer 40k, played Warhammer 40k, and thought about the Emperor as an actual person and not just a god emperor machine attached to a chair, there are similarities that could be made in this series. The Emperor is complex, really complex. And then the third book I'm going to read is another one that I'm very excited about. It is The Bone Ships, which we talked a little bit about last week, by R.J. Barker. R.J. Barker, I read the first novel in his other series, Gods of the Weird Wood, in less than 5 hours. Like, I just could not put that book down. It was fabulous. It was great. I 10 out of 10 recommend. Go read that book. Just go read that book. And I described R.J. Barker's style of reading, or writing, excuse me, as grim, as in Grimm's fairy tale, rather than a grim, dark novel. And that's an important distinction because this is not, although this does have some very grim portions in it, the grim, like, there are some blood, there is some gore, there are some interesting depictions, but the feel of the world, the feel of this book, at least in the first page that I read and everything else, is very much a staring into the dark sea and having the sea stare back at you. I think this will be a really great read. Everything I've seen so far, I really enjoyed the other book that I read by R.J. Barker. And this is about the ocean, ships, and dragons. Like, that's it. You won me at ships and dragons. and that's what I'm going to enjoy. So, those are the 3 I've planned to read. I guess the question is, of those 3, The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, Ancillary Sword by Anne Leckie, or Grief of Stones by Catherine Anderson, is there one of these books that you, audience participating at home, are looking forward to hearing my thoughts on, looking forward to reading yourself? You know, what are you looking forward to? Mm-hmm. No, I can't hum that because it would be a DMCA strike. Because I'm trying to decide which of these 3 I'm most excited for, and these two are sequels to books I really, really enjoyed. And this is a first volume in a series that's by an author that I enjoyed his other work by a lot. So I think all 3 are going to be really good. I'm looking forward to seeing... And they're all going to be very different. Like, this is a fantasy steampunk murder mystery, because that's how that works. This is a sci-fi space opera, sort of. Military science fiction, sort of. Kind of novel. And this is a fantasy that I don't know where to put it yet. Because it's just gonna be so interesting. So Mandy's like, I'm intrigued by all of them. Hawkeye's like, they all sound interesting. I'm like, yeah, they are. They all sound really good. I can, like, I was looking at, when I picked this book up, and I was like, I have to read this book. After reading this, Gods of the Weirdwood, which, by the way, look at that beautiful cover. Look at how pretty that is. You can see the face of the tree, and the wood is just... There you go. But I read through this. I read all 623 pages of this book in about 5 hours. I could not put it down. And now I'm like, oh, look, there's this one. And I'm going to be having the same thing probably where I pick up this book and I'll be like, I'm not going to put this one down. I feel like this is going to be very interesting. But I think, I think that's where we're going to call it for tonight. Unless you all have questions that you want to ask me about the books we've been reading or discussing. Whether that's the books we talked about this week or any of the books we talked about last week. House on the Cerulean Sea. Fellowship of Bakers and Magic. Gods of the Weirdwood. Witness for the Dead. Phoenix King. Oh, and Dead Man's Hand. Of course, Dead Man's Hand. Oh, I do have one other book I'm probably going to finish this week. It's probably... This is a book I've been slowly savoring. It's called Soul Keeper by David Dalglish. This has been my read slowly and enjoy dark fantasy zombie apocalypse with a fire elemental that is wonderfully snarky and does not have any dialogue. So that's what this is, but this is a book I've been savoring and reading intentionally slowly, versus others where I was just like finishing it all on the way. But I will indeed send you all of these titles, Mandy. I will also, as I did for the other VOD that is up on YouTube, where we talked about all of these books from last week. It is on YouTube. I put all of the links. I can even just click get shareable link. I put all from the VOD from last week. I put all of the links in the description. And as I've been trying to do, where I can, I've been using the author's personal website rather than Barnes & Noble or Amazon or anything like this, because that way I can link to the author, and sometimes they might have things that people like signed copies, if that's the thing that you're into. Or perhaps they have different editions that might be more interesting. I have confirmed, I'm not going to read it before the new year, because I am ordering the special edition of it, but, in the new year, I will be reading, The Red Palace by June Her, and I have found where I can get the Korean edition of that book. And I am very excited for the Korean edition of that book, even though I do not read Korean. But this is the June Her's The Red Palace. This is the American edition cover. It's kind of pretty. It's really great. Other editions are pretty, but what I really want is, where is it? I have to show you June Her, The Red Palace Korean edition. This, I would like to direct you all to this image of this book. Hi. I will be getting this book I'll read this in the start of the new year, probably not before then. It is a Korean historical mystery. I am getting the Korean edition because it is absolutely gorgeous and all of the illustrations all the way through, but I will be reading the English edition because I don't read Korean. I also love the fact that that June Her, who is the author, who has a degree in unfortunately no subtitles, has a degree in Korean history, is Korean and grew up in the United States and Canada, currently lives in Canada, had gone back to Korea to go to university, and now writes historical fiction, mostly like kind of straddling that line between YA and adult historical fiction. And she says she writes like basically Korean drama historical fiction, and I'm like, I am here for it. Please and thank you, all of it. But she has, for each of the books, a public playlist to get you into the vibe of each of the books. When I write a book, I like to create a playlist and a mood board to help set the tone. I'm sharing it with you so you can also immerse yourself more fully into the book using more senses. I'm just like, thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So Red Palace is, it's dark. I know the historical figure that's being discussed, that she uses as the background for this book, And it's hella dark. Joseon, Korea, 1758. There are few options available to illegitimate daughters in the capital city, but through hard work and study, 17-year-old Hyun has earned a position as a palace nurse. All she wants is to keep her head down, do a good job, and perhaps finally win her estranged father's approval. But Hyun is suddenly thrust into the dark and dangerous world of court politics when someone murders 4 women in a single night, and the prime suspect is Hyun's closest friend and mentor. Determined to prove her beloved teacher's innocence, Hyun launches in her own secret investigation. In her hunt for truth, she encounters Eugene, a young police inspector also searching for the killer. When evidence begins to point to the crown prince himself as the murderer, Hyun and Eugene must work together to search the darkest corners of the palace to uncover the deadly secrets behind the bloodshed. Yes, an Edgar Award winner. There's a playlist and a Pinterest. Hey, Springleaf, I really recommend this author. I did read Force the Stolen Girls. That's more YA. Everything I've heard is that the Red Palace and then her next book, Crane Among Wolves, is going to be more adult. And then The Silence of Bones is another one that I read. Yeah, she writes really interesting historical mystery. And then A Crane Among Wolves is the book that's coming out at the end of next year. Which I guess is also technically YA, but again, she puts all of this, she has a playlist for every one of the books. Yes, exactly. So many good books to read. So, you know, all of the joy coming from that. So yeah, for next Saturday, Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, Ancillary Sword by Anne Leckie, and The Grief of Stones by Catherine Anderson. So those are going to be the 3 that I'm going to read. I can give you a I can't give you a taste of The Grief of Stones because it literally opens, the first sentence of that book is a spoiler for the end of book 1, or a book of Witness of the Dead, and I would rather you go okay, but I can read you the first sentence of Ancillary Sword. Considering the circumstances, you could use another lieutenant, Anander Minanai, ruler, for the moment, of all of the vast reaches of Radchai space, sat in a wide chair cushioned with embroidered silk. This body that spoke to me, one of thousands, looked to be about 13 years old. Black-clad, dark-skinned, her face was already stamped with the aristocratic features that were, in Radchai space, a marker of the highest rank and fashion. Under normal circumstances, no one ever saw such young versions of the Lord of the Radok, but these were not normal circumstances. Yes, will read, will enjoy, and I'm looking forward to it. And then the Bone Ships, the first sentence of the Bone Ships. By the way, just flipping through this book, there are sea shanties in this book, interwoven. They're in-world sea shanties, and each of the chapters has chapter header art. I love books like this. There is also, at the back of this book, as I have discovered, where is it? I found it earlier. Oh, yes. There is an appendix with the slang definitions that is used in this book, which is always useful. I reach out for all of these as one, and I kid you not, Can we not just appreciate the fact that my man has an actual table of contents with the chapter headers and titles and page numbers? Like, thank you. Thank you. Also, map. There is a map. So, I'm going to share with you the very very first of the little shanties that's in here. 200 boats of leaf and line, 5,000 held aboard, spear in hand and Cassia rode foremost of the horde. A spray of ships upon the brine to hunt the beast below, for maiden, for mother to the hag's embrace, the many now would go. But oh, what feast, and oh, what riches, and oh, what fame does beckon. 500 ships, 10,000 crew, to hunt the Aracasian. Yeah, being able to go flip back and forth is great. I read through, like, the first 2 pages of this when I was trying to decide to pick it up. Because, again, if I like the blurb on the back of the book, I'll read the first page and decide from there if it's a book that I think I will enjoy. And if that's the case, I read the first page, and I feel the desire to turn the page, then that's a book that I'm going to get. Whether it's from the library, i.e. support your local libraries and read good books, or if it's a book I'm going to buy. Sometimes I'll get the first book from the library and then decide that I really enjoy it, and then I'll buy the rest of the series, or I'll buy the first book and then the rest of the series. But this book, I went through the first 5 pages of this book, of actual text of the actual story of this book, and you don't get a character name for either the main character, who is the point of view character, or any of the character, or the character that is speaking to them. It is so well written that it takes you a second to stop and think about that. But then when you do, you're like, oh. Give me your hat. They are not the sort of words that you expect to start a legend, but they were the first words he ever heard her say. She said them to him, of course. It was early. The scent of fish filled his nose and worked its way into his stomach, awakening the burgeoning nausea. His head ached and his hands trembled in a way that would only be stilled by the first cup of ship wine. Then the pain in his mind would fade as the thick liquid slithered down his gullet, warming his throat and guts. After the first cup would come the second, and with that would come the numbness that told him he was on his way to deadening his mind the way his body was dead, or waiting to be. Then there would be a third cup, and then a fourth, and then a fifth, and the day would be over, and he would slip into darkness. But the black ship in the quiet harbor would still sit at its rope. Its bones would creak as they pulled against the tide. The crew would moan and creak as they drank on its decks, and he would fall into unconsciousness in this old flencer's hut. Here he was, shipwife in name only, commander in word only, failure. Voices from outside, because even here, in the long-abandoned and ghost-hunted flensing yards, there was no real escape from others. Not even the memory of Kishan's rot, the disease of the boneyards, could keep people from cutting through. Like, you found in those first 3 paragraphs, I have A, so many questions, and B, so well-written depictions. I know exactly what kind of character this is, even if I don't have a description or a name yet. Right, like, oh, I love this. further down. The next voice he heard was the challenge, delivered while he kept his eyes closed against the tides of nausea ebbing and flowing in hot, acidic waves from his stomach. "Give me your hat," a voice thick with the sea, a bird shriek croak of command, the sort of voice you ran to obey, had you scurrying up the rigging to spread the wings of your ship. Maybe, just maybe, on any other day, or after a single cup of ship wine, maybe he would have done what she had said, and handed over his two-tailed shipwife's hat, which, along with the bright dye in his hair, marked him out as a commander, though an undeserving one. But in the restless night his sleep had been troubled by thoughts of his father, and thoughts of another life. Not a better one, not an easier one, but a sober one, one without shame. One in which he did not feel the pull of the sea hag's slimy hands trying to drag him down to his end. One of the long days at the wing of a fluke boat, singing of the sea and pulling on the ropes as his father glowed with pride at how well his little fisher boy worked the winds. Of long days before his father's strong and powerful body was broken as easily as a thin Varsic vine, ground to meet between the side of his boat and the pitless hull of a bone ship. His hand reaching up from the black water, a bearded face, mouth open as if to call to his boy in his final agonizing second. Such strength, and it had meant nothing. Like, that depiction of the straight up horrible death that this character's father has suffered. And you're like, hi, that's the start of page 3. I'm sure that had a very, very scarring effect on the character that we're meeting, who I guess is a drunk. But I'm really looking forward to these. So, does anyone have any questions about the books that we've read so far? Any of the books we're talking about reading for next week? Anything at all? Because I think I just want to chat more about books, but I want to chat, not just, me talk at you, which I guess is a thing I could do. Okay, well, I guess what we should do then is we should call it a night. I'm going to post this along with, again, a poll on my YouTube community page where I'm going to ask which of the 3 is the most anticipated or you're most excited about. Yes, go back to fly page maps. I wish, I understand why this is not a hardcover, but what I really wish is I miss old school hardcover fantasy novels that had the fold-in map, not just on the fly pages, but in the fold-in map that you could fold out and then have the book that would lay flat as you're reading the rest of the book, so you didn't have to go back and forth. I miss those books. But that's just me. And I understand why those are more expensive. And why things will be complicated. But we're going to go raid High Shelf Collective because they are doing their High Shelf charity drive. And we always want to support them. I will always give you more book recs. I am here for more book recs, and we will be back next Saturday. We're going to talk about Bone Ships, and Ancillary Sword, and Grief of Stones, as well as if anybody has any questions about any of the other books, or wants to mention or throw out any comments about any of the other books we've talked about this week or last week, always down for that. But we're going to go raid into High Shelf Collective because they're doing their charity drive, and we want to give them some love. Also, as for me, hi everybody, thanks for hanging out. You can find me back here tomorrow for episode 4 of Arc 3 of Carousel Court, and all of the drama that will be coming in 1995. Again, catch you next time, everybody.